Hey guys, it's Alana, and welcome back to another episode of Seeing Other People. Together, we're navigating modern dating alongside experts and real life daters who are sharing their stories. Don't have a date for tonight? No problem. Come learn, laugh, and maybe even cry along with us as we navigate the dating scene together.
Welcome, everyone. We're so excited. This is a special collab episode.
Yeah,
I'm
it
Dr.
is.
Morgan Anderson, and we have with us.
Alana Dunn. Hey guys, how's it going? Morgan, I'm so excited right now.
I know. I have always wanted to collab with you. I love everything you put out and your podcast, seeing other people. So yeah, this is such a fun collab happening here.
I'm so excited, and I feel like you're exactly who my audience needs to hear from right now. So I think this is just such a perfect joining of worlds, and everyone's going to learn so much and benefit so much from this. So I think, yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for being here. Thanks for coming on and having me
Yes.
on.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Can you give us a little backstory for my audience? I want them to know just a
Yes.
little bit about you and how you found yourself here and doing this work and with the platform you have.
Absolutely. So for anyone who knows me personally, I think we all would have laughed if somebody had said, "Oh, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 3 years, Alana will be, you know, hosting dating podcasts and helping people with their dating struggles." I think we all would have laughed very hard. I ended up finding myself running Hinge's social media for work after leaving the music industry. And at the same time, my dating life was in absolute shambles. And so I kind of was like, well, if I can use my experiences to kind of caution people and help them not end up feeling as broken and terrible as I do now, then that'll all be worth it, everything I went through. And so I kind of came from a place of vulnerability in terms of the content that I was creating for Hinge, where I wasn't just saying, do this and your dating life will be great, or do this on the app and you'll find success. I was like, no, dating is actually really, really difficult and hard. And it's not just going to, appear when you least expect it. Your person isn't going to just knock on your door, like we're going to face difficult things, but we can overcome them. And the more we talk about them, the more we communicate, the better off we'll be. And so I really shared my experiences as a way to help people through their own and to help realize, we're not all alone in what we're going through. And that inspired the podcast. And it's been 2.5 years of seeing other people. And I just have such an amazing community that's grown with me. And I love it. So that's how I got here.
I love it so much. And from what I know, you are engaged now as well, right?
Yes. Yes, I am.
So you went on your own personal journey, and obviously, I relate to this too. Of using, I say, like using the lemons that life has given you to make lemonade, and so rewarding to be able to help people. And I love that you were putting out real content for Hinge, and that you continue to do that of the real truth of it because there's just too many people out there that are like, oh, it's just, it's so easy and you'll find your person. Just keep showing up. Just wait. They'll show up when you're not trying. It's like, actually, no. So
Right. You
I
actually
love
have
that.
to try and work
Yeah.
on yourself
And work on
and
yourself. Yes.
go through it. Yeah, I'm curious. I'd also love to hear how you got to where you are now. You're a relationship coach, attachment theory expert, creator of ESLs, which is Empowered, Loved, Secured Relationship Method,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. How did this all come to be?
Yeah. So I was getting my doctorate degree in clinical psychology, always had an interest in couples, was always fascinated by relationships and understanding the different dynamics. And then in my second year of grad school, I actually found myself in a relationship with a narcissist. And it was 18 months of hell. And at the end of it, I had just completely lost myself. I had no self worth. I tell the story on my podcast of I was in my lobby of my apartment building, sitting on the floor, filing a police report at my lowest point over what had happened. And I just knew that I could not do this anymore. Like, I cannot date this way. and I
Yeah.
really wanted to find my person. So I threw myself into understanding how to have a healthy relationship, because I thought, if I can't do it, at least I could research it and then maybe I could understand it. So I threw myself into attachment theory research in my doctorate program. And I started my own healing journey, and I applied it to myself and started applying it to people I worked with. And then I was in private practice and seeing 20 people a week as a psychologist. And I just realized, wow, like more people need this. So then that was the birth of the podcast, which is now three years, and great community. And yeah, definitely surprised me. I would have never predicted being in this place as well. And it's just so meaningful.
I have a
So
question for you, and I don't want this to come off insulting in any way. It's more so just curiosity because I know, average normal people who know nothing about psychology, nothing about dating, often, not often, but they can find themselves in unhealthy relationships, narcissistic relationships, abusive relationships. So I'm curious, you were like you had your psych degree,
yes,
you were
I
getting
was
your
studying
doctorate.
it.
So
Yeah.
exactly. So how does somebody with that knowledge end up in that same place too? Because,
Mm,
sometimes we say like, "Oh, if only I had known more, I had known the signs to look out for." But at the same time, when we're going through it, we have blinders on. We have those rose-colored glasses. So I imagine it was really maybe surprising when you actually realized what
yeah.
was going on.
I love this question, because I really want everyone to know that this can happen to anyone. Anyone can find themselves in a relationship with a narcissist. I know other psychologists, I know lawyers, I know doctors, I know highly intelligent individuals who know what narcissism is, finding themselves in a relationship with a narcissist. And there's a few reasons here. Um, I'll talk about yeah, I could go into this to be a whole episode, but one of the things I think about is, if you haven't healed some of your childhood woundings, and you haven't maybe worked on the father wound or the mother wound, or some of those deep attachment wounds, you're just gonna be more susceptible to it. Like, you're just more vulnerable. No matter how intelligent you are, no matter how much you know, like emotionally, you're just gonna be more vulnerable towards it when you haven't done that work. And then the other thing is, and this is actually the more important thing, is that narcissists are just good at what they do. They are just charming. They will they can put on any kind of show. They're incredible actors. You oftentimes, I didn't know until 6 months in. So out of the 18 months, the first 6 months was normal, you wouldn't have known. So I think it's just important to realize, like, this can happen to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it like to have that realization of like, "Oh shit, this is what's actually going on?"
I was mortified at the time. There wasn't Instagram back then. Like, Instagram was selfies. Like, there wasn't the information out there, I will say. And so I didn't really know how common it was. And I had all this shame. Thank God I had an incredible clinical supervisor who I went to, and she made me feel good. She made me feel safe. I was getting death threats at my workplace. Like, it was bad.
Oh my
So
god.
she showed up for me just in major ways, and she was kind of like my one person. But I had such a hard time opening up to anybody about it. I had so much shame. So it wasn't until years later that I could even acknowledge to other people what had happened. And a lot of my friends knew the charming side of him, so they didn't even know what was happening behind closed doors. Um, so yeah, shout out to my clinical supervisor and my therapist at that time, that really helped me get through it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm obviously so sorry that you had to go through that, but it's amazing that you were able to take that and really do something great with it and help other people not end up in that situation or know how to navigate it if they do.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I am in an incredible relationship now. Been with my partner for almost 3 years. So, it's amazing to be at this place in my life where I can look back and say, wow, like, there was so much that I didn't know about what it actually feels like to be in a great, healthy relationship. And we have this term in clinical psych called corrective emotional experiences, where you experience something and it can almost correct in your brain, like the blueprint that you have for a relationship. And my relationship now, these last 3 years, I'm always having these corrective emotional experiences, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, it is so
Yeah.
crazy. I remember, the first time I ended up in a healthy relationship after the horrible relationship experience that I had, it was so shocking where I was like, "What?" Like anytime something positive happened that was then followed by another positive experience, I was like, "This can't be happening. Like this is genuinely too good to be true. Like what's the catch?"
Yeah.
It was, like, so difficult to wrap my head around, "Wait a second, things could actually just be good," and even though that relationship ended, I remember feeling really grateful for it after, like, I was heartbroken when this guy broke up with me, but I was like, "You know what? This relationship taught me how I want to be treated and how I deserve to be treated, and I didn't know that before I met this guy." So, yeah, I'm a little brokenhearted right now, but I just gained so much out of that.
I love it. I love it. And it's true. I think I always talk about we can have healthy, great relationships where there is secure attachment. And that's the foundation. That's the baseline. Like when you're dating, it's like that's what you want as the baseline, right? And there's still compatibility. So sometimes if we have this history of not having healthy relationships and then we're in a healthy one, we think like, "Oh, this is it. Like I found the person." But it's like actually this is the bare minimum standard. You're in a healthy relationship. And now we have to explore compatibility, right?
Mhm. And grow like, figure out how to, build on that. We don't want just the bare minimum. Like, we
Yes.
want we want yes, we want to have that standard of being treated well, but we also wanna make sure it's with the right person.
The right person. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
what about you on your own healing journey? Because, I know both of us realize dating is less about just the numbers and going on all the dates. And it's actually more about like doing the work on yourself. And yes, it's a numbers game. Yes, you have to put yourself out there, but you also have to like really work on the internal things, right? So just tell me about your journey there.
I was a very, very anxious attached dater, and I, for so long, genuinely believed that if a guy I liked didn't like me, then what was my purpose? Like, I had no purpose. I
Mhm.
was nothing. Like, I attached so much of my self-worth and my just being enough to whether or not some random guy from a dating app that I went on one date with wanted to see me again. And so I had a really difficult time in my dating life because it's not going to work out with everyone. And all of these times that it didn't work out with someone, whether I got ghosted or they rejected me, or even if I knew I wasn't feeling it, I still wanted them to want to date me because I wanted that validation of, okay, I am good enough. And so I ended up in bad relationships. I ended up being treated really poorly. I ended up accepting way less than I deserved for so long because I didn't have any sense of like, well, I'm enough on my own. And if somebody's going to be my partner, it's because they add value to my life, not just because they make me feel better about myself. And it took a
Mhm.
really long time for me to realize that I am a whole complete person on my own, and there's so much that I have to offer, and actually somebody that I wanna be with, I wanna be with them because I want to be with them, not just because they want to be with me, and that's something that it really, really took a long time for me to learn, and I say that for so long, I kept breaking my own heart because I wasn't ready to, accept the right type of love, until I really went through that healing process.
Thank you for sharing this. I know there's going to be people listening who really relate to what you just shared. And I certainly relate to that too. This idea of putting people on a pedestal, devaluing yourself, placing your self worth in somebody else's hands. Ugh. And then going through rejection as having to mean something so deeply about yourself, instead of it just being, hey, rejection is actually part of the dating
Mhm.
process, right? It's like actually what has to happen in order for you to find your person. And then I loved what you said, because I always talk about this with clients, this shift of, well, do I like them? Like,
Yep.
how do I feel in their presence? Is this actually somebody that I want to get to know? Like those are really, really, really important shifts. And I do think it's like, until you do this inner work,
Yeah.
you are going to be continued to be attracted to emotionally unavailable people. And I want to ask you something. This is kind of like a deep question, but it's something I see a lot with anxiously attached people. So I'm curious, like, if your past self would relate to this. Um, this idea that, and a lot of times you're not aware of it, but that you don't actually seek out emotionally available people because there is a fear of you being seen, like in you being deeply known, in you being loved. Because it's like, if I don't think I'm enough or I don't think I'm good enough, I actually don't want somebody who wants to really see me or like really get to know me. Did
You
that
know,
feel true?
I'm glad you asked, and I thought about that for a long time, I really did, because I was trying to identify, like, why does this keep happening to me? Like, what am I
Yeah.
doing to have this situation just play on repeat? And as much as I want to say yes, I don't think that was it for me. I think I genuinely just A, I the type of person that I was attracted to was the type of person who absolutely did not want to settle down. For years, I worked in the music industry. I only wanted to date guys who either also worked in music or were musicians themselves. And all of those people, until they're like in their early 30s, they don't want a relationship. They are so career driven where anything that is going to get in the way of that, like a girlfriend was seen as a distraction. And so over and over, I kept dating these people where I was like, well, of course, like it makes so much sense. Like they love dating me or talking to me because I get it. I get what they're going through. But then a few months in, I'd be hit with I really like you, but I don't want a relationship. And I'm happy to keep hanging out if you're okay with that. But just know I don't want anything serious. And in my mind, I was always like, well, I'll change their mind. They don't know yet. They don't know me enough yet to know that they want something serious with me. And
Challenge
so
accepted. I'll make
that was
you.
literally my mindset.
Yeah.
I'm like, nope, nope. Like, I will convince you, I will change your mind.
Yes,
And
yes.
I kept doing that on
Mhm.
repeat. And so I don't think it was that I was afraid to let somebody see the real me, because some of these guys, especially like the musicians, they're very like deep people. Like we
Yeah.
would get very, very, very deep and raw and have very, very vulnerable conversations. But I just romanticized this idea of dating somebody in that world and going on tour together or building our careers together. Like there was just this vision that I had.
Mhm.
And so I continued to date the same type of person. I say it's like I dated the same guy in a different font throughout the first half of my 20s. And it was never going to work out with any of those guys.
I hear you. I always say on my show, I dated the same guy with a different haircut. So it's like same thing.
Yeah.
And I actually love that you pointed this out too, of like, I love this term capacity. Like you were attracted to people who, maybe even if part of them wanted a relationship, they did not have the capacity to emotionally invest and show up and actually
Yeah.
build a relationship, right? And the thing is, realizing that okay, the capacity is not there, instead of making it about you not being good enough, or that you're not worth the investment. And there's actual logistical barriers to the kind of guy that you were attracted to, like describing their career and the lifestyle. It's like, that was actually a barrier. My thing was, I always loved people in different countries. Like I always loved long distance, like, different states, different countries. And I had this idea of like travel, and right. It's like there was logistical barriers there.
Right. Like the exact thing that we were romanticizing was not attainable.
Yes. Yes. And for me, and I don't know if you relate to this, but for me, it's like that was what was comfortable for me too. It's like the emotional unavailability was the norm that I was used to from childhood. So that was my comfort zone, right? And this is like going really deep, but it's like my dad worked 80 hours a week. Like I never had a close connected relationship. And that's some of where my like comfort with anxious attachment came from. It's like that was the blueprint that I had for the male relationship, that they weren't available.
Yeah. I actually have a question for you off of that. I'm curious. I don't know what it is for me because I think my attachment issues, not issues, but my attachment got so much worse after this one horrible relationship that I was in. So I'm curious,
Yes.
from your expertise, how much of it is from childhood versus a traumatic experience? Like, could there be somebody who is genuinely like so securely attached, but then has a bad relationship experience and they become the most anxious person in the world? Or is it like 90, 100% based in childhood and the way you grow up?
I love that you asked this because for a long time, attachment theory research said that it was all childhood. And that's what it was for forever. And then in more recent years, like since 2005 and on,
Mhm.
um, the research does support that it's all significant relationships. And that can definitely include romantic partnerships. And from my experience, like first like your first partner or your second or your third, those early on romantic experiences in particular have a really big impact. But it also could happen at any time. If it was a significant relationship, that can have an impact on your attachment style. So there are plenty of people that I know that had great childhoods. They'll come to me, they're like, my mom and dad had the best relationship. They've been married for 65 years. They were there for me. Why on earth do I have this anxious attachment style? And then we dive into their romantic history and we can find the roots of it. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it is funny because I go back to, one thing that happened in this traumatic relationship that I had was the entire time he was cheating on me. And I was very suspicious of it and I didn't even know the term gaslighting at the time, but anytime I would bring up any concerns, I was told I was crazy. So I started to believe I was crazy. And I found out later that the entire time he had been with other people. And I it's funny because my first ever crush and, like, kid childhood relationship was when I was in middle school, and that boyfriend also cheated on me with one of my best friends at the time. And so I like to connect those 2 experiences because I also, in that situation, had a feeling, and, then I
Mm.
learned that it was true, but I still kept myself in it and kept letting myself get hurt over and over as the behavior continued to repeat itself.
Isn't that interesting to think about? And it's like, I guess when we go back to our childhood selves, and this is some of the inner child healing work, like going back to middle school version of you and just sitting with her and saying, like, hey, what did you really need at that time? Like what was it that you needed, right? Like how could have you been supported more? And obviously we know that she needed to know that this was not okay and that she was worth so much more and that she deserves to stand up for herself and that she should trust her intuition and trust her gut, right? And that's some of the beautiful thing. Like as an adult, we get to go and say, hey, I can be my ideal parent now. I can show up in the ways that I need to. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
I want to ask, as we're talking about bad relationships and
Yes.
attachment, you recently had an episode about becoming securely attached after a bad relationship. And I want to touch on that a little because I think that's something that I know a lot of my listeners struggle with and something that I struggled with too. And so I'm curious, what are the biggest factors in healing and getting just to a better place mentally, physically, but really just healing your attachment after something like that kind of shatters your world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say I think it's really important to make space for the healing because I know this is what my younger self would do. I just try to move on to the next date. And it was just a way to like numb and distract myself so I wouldn't have to actually feel things. So my first thing is okay, pause, hit the pause button. We're going to be dating ourselves for a while. We're going to get to know ourselves. And one of the best things you can do is really look at your relationship history. I have a program called the Empowered Secure Love Program. And the first exercise we do is called the relationship inventory. And we're looking at all the significant relationships, including childhood. And we're asking questions like, was I loved? Did I feel emotionally safe? Did I get my needs met? So just taking an inventory of all your past relationships, really, really helpful. Um, another thing, and I'm just kind of going off of what I think are non-negotiables. Another thing is I call it Ferrari maintenance. Like you're not a Prius, you're a Ferrari. Like you gotta build your daily non-negotiable routines of how you show up for yourself. So
Yes.
important because we're after a bad relationship, if you're anything like me, it's like you just really have like no self-worth. I mean, depending how bad it was, but you can just be really beaten down and you could have all these lies about yourself that you internalize based on how you were treated. So we have to really rebuild your self-worth. And part of that is your daily behaviors, your self-care, the way you're showing up for yourself. So you want to build some daily non-negotiable routines. So those two things, very, very important. And then the other things are looking at your beliefs about yourself and your beliefs about relationships,
Mhm.
rewiring your brain for healthy beliefs. Um, very, very important. And I do have more on that on my podcast too. And then the final thing, this is another favorite thing, and this is embodying the securely attached version of yourself and really understanding what is secure attachment. How do I show up that way? What does it look like in practice? And um, learning how to be securely attached in action.
Yeah, I love all of that, and one thing that you pointed out that I wanna touch on more is the daily non-negotiables. I think that's something that I would have benefited so much from applying to my life and actually, like, taking note of throughout my 20s, like, especially when I was really going through it, and it's something that I didn't really start paying attention to until this year, actually, and I've noticed how much better I feel when I do work out, like, I've had a weird relationship with fitness over the last, like, decade where I've put such an emphasis on working out because for how I look, and you're like, "Oh, if I work out, then I'll feel better about what I'm eating," and I've completely changed that mindset this year to, I feel mentally better if I work out, and if I don't get it done in the day, like, that's okay, sometimes I'm too busy, but I know that it is the best 45 minutes of my day if I can make it to a class because it's also time away from my phone, which I've also noticed is so important for me and my mental health. And going to the dog park helps me so much. And so all of these things I started paying attention to what actually makes me feel better. And while I can't necessarily accomplish them every single day, when I start to go into phases of feeling a little down or really burnt out or just not great, not like my best self, I know already, okay, well, here are the things that I can do to feel 1%, 5%, 10% better today. And so I think even if you're not going through something right now, it's so helpful to learn what these things are and test them and really see like, does this help me feel better? Okay, maybe there's something else I could do instead that helps me feel even better so that when you have those difficult periods, you already know, okay, well, I know what I can do.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's so key. And I love the neuroscience behind this too of you're training your brain to say, "Hey, your needs matter." It's so connected to self-worth because we can say, "I love myself. I am enough," and that's good. Affirmations are great. And your brain needs to see evidence of behaviors in action, right? So when you are taking that 45 minutes for yourself, you're reaffirming to your brain, like, hey, see, like it matters. Yeah, I deserve to be taken care of. So I am enough. I do love myself. And it's the best form of self care when we keep the promises we make to ourselves, when we show up that way. That's how we're really building rock solid self worth.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask, your course, your relationship method is empowered, loved, secure. What do you think are the biggest blockers from people feeling empowered, loved, and secure?
Thank you for asking that. Yeah, I think what happens is people are living in their past experiences. They are repeating their patterns. Whether it's from childhood or from past relationships, they're reliving those experiences and bringing them with them into new relationships. That's one of the biggest barriers. And it's all unconscious. It's not like you intentionally go, "Hey, I want to replay what happened to me in my last relationship," but it's totally unconscious. Another barrier is beliefs about self, beliefs about relationships. You have this little file cabinet in your brain labeled relationships, and you have a lot of beliefs there that really impact your decisions, your behaviors, how you show up, etc. So really, we have to get rid of the ones that don't serve you. And then the other barrier that's huge is not understanding attachment theory. Because when we don't understand why we do what we do, we can't let it go. So attachment theory is going to help you understand the why so that when it's happening, you can then realign to secure attachment.
Yeah, I think that's really important, like understanding it and learning about it. I always wonder, where would I be in terms of dating and relationships had I not ended up at that job at Hinge, and had I not ended up really just studying dating and researching dating and talking about bad and good, negative and positive,
Yes.
healthy and unhealthy dating habits. And I think it's so empowering to learn about yourself and why you make the choices that you make, because then you're able to hold yourself accountable for doing it. And it's okay if you don't always make the right choice. We're not perfect. We're never always going to do the right thing or say the right thing or, follow our gut when we should versus shouldn't. But it helps so much rather than feeling just like, "What's wrong with me?" or "This is the way I am and that's it, so
Mhm.
I'm doomed." It's like, no, we can learn, we can grow, and we can be actually, like, taking actionable steps to get to the place we wanna be, like, one day at a time.
Yeah, you nailed it because I think so many people, and this was me in my 20s, was I was just so critical of myself. I was like, oh, something's wrong with me. I'm too much. And then that was reaffirmed for me by the people I was dating were telling me I was too much. And oh, it's just my childhood trauma. Like, just all this blame and stuff that was out of my control. And it's really disempowering, right? But when
Mhm.
we can take ownership and have awareness, then we get to show up with compassion, and compassion and understanding helps us really release things and then allows us to choose differently. But 90% of people are just stuck in the self-critical loop of blaming themselves and not getting the understanding. So that's why my show, your show, people like us, it's really important to spread awareness just to help more people be self-compassionate and be empowered and know that it can be different, that you're not broken. It's not too late. You're not too much, right? Like there's just some healing. And I think it's really empowering once you realize that.
Yeah, absolutely, I couldn't have said it better. Do you think, or how much do you think somebody else's attachment style impacts whether or not a situation can work. Because I can imagine there are people listening like, "Oh, well, like, I'm anxiously attached, but maybe I'll find somebody who's secure so I can stay anxiously attached and they'll just fix me."
So I also love the research on this because we used to say like your attachment style is always your attachment style. That's what old attachment theory research said. And now we realize everybody can change. Anybody can move towards secure attachment. And here's the reality. If you're anxiously attached and you're dating somebody who's securely attached, that probably will be helpful to you, but it won't be everything. And in any healthy, growing partnership, which I believe all relationships that are healthy are always evolving and growing, we always want to be co creating secure attachment. So you're
Mhm.
going to have to probably show up and learn how to co create secure attachment with your partner, right? Um, and then if you're anxiously attached and you're attracted to someone who has some avoidant attachment style tendencies, you can make that work, which people are always shocked. It's possible. Here's the thing, it requires both people being willing to co create secure attachment. So you can't just label somebody as avoidantly attached and then say it's not going to happen. No, like you could co create secure attachment. It's just going to be harder depending on where somebody is at on the spectrum, too, right? It's like everyone's different in terms of how their attachment style shows up. And I think of it as like, what percentage of the time do you hang out in that attachment style? So if you're 89% in avoidant attachment, yes, that is harder. That person's going to benefit from working on themselves more. But if it's a 25% of the time thing, maybe you can find the right person and you work together and co-create secure attachment. So, and then I know this is so long winded, but this is, I could go on a whole tangent about this, but obviously to give people the best chance at the healthiest relationship, we want two individuals who are both working on themselves and they're both realizing, okay, how can I show up as securely attached as possible? All while knowing it's never going to be perfect. There's going to be ruptures. You're going to have to repair. So that's kind of my long answer for you there.
I almost wish there was some machine, or I guess in 2023, an app that would tell us like, okay, you're like 24% anxious and like 70% avoidant and like this percent secure. And then
Yes.
like based on the different actions you do or discussions you have in therapy or journaling, whatever it is, like you see it changing because that would like motivate you to keep going or be like,
Yeah.
okay, alert, alert, gotta do something here. We're going downhill.
I love that. Well, this is not quite that level. I do have an attachment style quiz, and I specifically made it into percentages because of that. Because some of
Oh,
them will
love
just say, "Oh,
that.
you're this." So mine does have percentages, which I really like, and that's just in my Instagram bio, Dr. Morgan Coaching. I have a attachment style quiz. It'll give you percentages. But I
Love
like
it.
your
People can
machine
just do that
idea.
once a month. Yeah, but like
Yeah,
that's okay.
pick
Once a
it
week,
up.
once a month, once a year,
Yes.
track your progress.
I have clients that do, and it's amazing. I mean, they become more securely attached over time. So there's so much evidence out there. Anybody can move towards secure attachment. It's not too late. Like it really is possible.
I really wonder, like with my relationship, I feel so secure. Like I feel like I did make a lot of changes in my anxious attachment before we met, where I think I grew a lot. I really became more like, okay, I know who I am and I don't need somebody else to complete me. And I think meeting Jake, he was absolutely secure. And I think his secureness allowed me to let it happen. And his open communication allowed me to feel like, okay, this actually is a healthy situation. And the more he openly communicates, the more I feel like I can openly communicate. And it was unlike anything I had ever experienced just from the start.
Mhm.
And I always wonder, like, if God forbid something happened and I had to end up being single again, what would I be like now? Having this experience, knowing what I know, would I go right back to my anxious habits or would I be more secure and more independent and really like fight for what I not fight for what I deserve, but know what my worth and know what I deserve?
Yeah.
It's weird to think about.
It is weird to think about. I definitely think it's the second one. As I was saying to you in the beginning, those corrective emotional experiences, they really can help us rewire our brain and raise our standards for relationships, heal our relationship beliefs. So it's a beautiful thing that you're doing that in your current relationship. I'm so excited for
Trying.
you. Yeah. While I have you, I know my audience would kill me if I didn't ask you some dating questions,
Let's do it.
specifically apps. Um, because all the time people are saying to me, "Oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated. I feel like I'm burnt out. I'm not having fun." And I have my own tips, but I'm so curious, like what would you say to that person that is just like wanting to get off the apps and they're like not having fun anymore? What advice would you give them?
Get off the apps.
Yeah.
They're not the only way to date. We put so much power into their hands and we say, well, dating apps exist. So if I'm not having success on the apps, then I'm just never going to be successful. There are a million other ways to meet people and to have probably a better experience in dating. Our parents, our grandparents, all of our ancestors, they did not use dating apps. So there's no reason why we have to just say dating apps are the only way to date. There are singles events, speed dating events. I know people who went to like a singles camp this past weekend. There are so many fun ways where you can go out and put yourself in the position to meet other singles. And if that's still something that feels, oh, like that's a little too forced or too much pressure, I don't know if I can handle that. Just go live your life. Like, go to a
Yeah.
bar, put your phone down. If you see somebody who you're attracted to, go say hi, ask them what they're drinking or like how they ended up at this place, how they found out about it. There are so many other ways to meet people. Put your phone down. You're standing in line to get coffee, strike up a conversation. Anytime you put your phone down, you become 10 times more approachable, maybe even more. And you can also ask people, ask your friends, your cousins, your coworkers, your acquaintances, "Hey, I'm really not feeling the dating apps right now, but I'd love to meet somebody. Do you have anybody in mind?" And if not, that's okay, but just keep me in the back of your mind if you do meet somebody. Easy. It's not rocket science.
So good. I love that you made this point. I always tell people the dating apps are just one way of meeting people. And yes, we do want all of our options, but just as you said, I mean, there's so many ways. Even at the grocery store. I love that one. Just like say hello to people. Um, and this whole point of like putting it out there, putting it into the universe of saying, hey, I am open to meeting people. And it's that vulnerability, it's being brave, talk to the people that you know, because likely the people you know other people, right? Like there are so many ways to get connected.
Yeah, and you never know when it'll happen, or even if you think, "Oh, well, I know my friends have no single friends." Well, maybe they'll be talking to somebody who will say, "Hey, do you have anybody?" Like maybe they'll be at work and their coworker will be like, "Oh, do you have anyone to set up with my cousin?" And had you not mentioned it, they might not have you at the top of their mind. Like, we like to think everybody's
Yes.
always looking out for us, but everyone else has a million things going on in their lives. And so you
Yeah.
really have to remind people. You could even say, send to your email, all of your email contacts, anyone you've ever met, or just a select few people that you feel comfortable with. Here's a photo of me or a few photos of me. Here's a little blurb, and here's what I'm looking for. You can send this around to anyone you know. Or if somebody asks you if you have somebody, here's some stuff you can tell them about me. You just got to put it out there.
It's just that bravery of putting it out there and being vulnerable. I love this. So I think about it as like planting seeds. Like you never know when those seeds are going to grow. So yeah, just share it with people and it may come up. And the other, I always say this, we want to get really clear on the outcome, right? So you have your relationship standards, you have the outcome clear of what you're looking for. And then we have to release the how it happens, surrender the how. And I think especially as career driven women, a lot of times we want to have the check boxes and we have a timeline and we have everything planned exactly how we want it to go. So sometimes we're blocking ourselves from opportunities just because we're trying to control how it happens. So I love that
Yeah.
you talked about that of like just be open, right? Like let it happen how it's going to happen.
Yeah, and going off of that, some people I feel like were so anti-dating apps for so long because that's not how they want their meet cute to go. Like they have romanticized this version of how they're gonna meet their partner, and the reality is it does not matter how you met. It
Yeah.
simply doesn't. All that matters is that you did meet. And so you want to give yourself the opportunity to connect with people. You never know where it is or how it is that you're going to meet your person. Maybe the app that you're going to meet your person on literally does not exist yet. Or the place that you're going to go where you're going to end up bumping into something and meeting them. You've never to this day thought about going to that place. We don't know what's going to happen. And so don't close yourself off by just saying, well, there's only one way I want to meet somebody.
So, so true. I love that. Just the openness. And yeah, I think hopefully by now people do know like it doesn't matter how you meet. Like let's get over like having this perfect story. Like you get to make it a great relationship. That's what matters, right? Oh,
What's
so
funny,
good.
and I met Jake on Hinge after I got let go from Hinge, and all of my friends were like, "Fuck Hinge, screw Hinge, like, we're all gonna delete it," and I'm like, "No, you guys, like, it's okay. Yeah, I'm, like, upset right now, but I still believe in the product and the app. Like, you guys don't all have to, like, delete Hinge. Like, I'm still gonna use it." And it was 3 months after 2 months after that we matched on Hinge, so
I love it so much. That's a great example. It's
yeah,
like, yeah, you never know. You never know.
yeah.
Um, well, this has been such a fun conversation. I feel like we could just talk for
It
hours.
has. One last thing on my end before we close out,
Yeah.
because I would get in trouble for not asking you this. What is the best piece of dating or relationship advice you've ever received or have to give?
Ooh, I would say, oh man, it's like you have to learn how to love yourself first. I know it's so cliche, but you have to build that relationship with yourself first. No one is going to fill a void for you. A relationship cannot give you anything that you can't give yourself. A relationship will multiply, it will add value, it will not fill a void. So, it really is build that relationship with you first.
I love that. I completely agree.
And I have to ask you because I have a question too. Excuse me. So, you're walking down the street and somebody wants your best life advice of all time.
Yep.
And it would just be like what you would say today to that person.
If you don't ask, you don't get. That
Yes.
it has taken me everywhere that has mattered in my life. It has completely guided me through my career, helped me get beyond my wildest dreams, opportunities.
Like interviewing the Jonas Brothers. Let's
Yeah.
just put that out
Yep.
there.
No,
That was
literally.
amazing.
And that was because I asked, and I
Beautiful.
thought it was the longest shot on the planet, and it happened. And it wouldn't have
What a
happened had I
beautiful
not taken the
example.
risk and asked. So if you don't ask, you don't get.
It applies everywhere. Love,
Everywhere.
career. I love it. It's so beautiful. This has been such a
Yeah.
good conversation. How can people connect with you? Give us all the things.
Yes. So I am everywhere at, no, not everywhere actually. I'm Instagram at Seeing Other People, TikTok at Alana.Dunn, and you can listen to Seeing Other People wherever you listen to podcasts. And you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Morgan Coaching, Dr. Morgan Coaching. And then the podcast is Let's Get Vulnerable everywhere podcasts are aired. So this was
Amazing.
so fun. I love this
So fun.
collab.
Me
Great to
too.
spend
Thank
time with you.
you.
Yes,
Back
thank you.
at
Everyone,
you.
make sure you go check out Seeing Other People. Thank you so much.
Check out Let's Get Vulnerable. Thanks for listening, daters. I hope today's episode made you feel just a little bit less alone out there, no matter what your status might be. Give your finger a break from swiping and hit that follow and review button instead. And if you have any burning questions or want to share your own dating horror stories, reach out to seeingotherpeoplepodcast@gmail.com. And in the meantime, keep on seeing other people.